Good morning. Welcome to day one, June 22nd, 2022, California Department of Education Advisory Commission on Special Education.
Recording in progress.
Michelle, please facilitate a roll call to establish a quorum.
My pleasure. Good morning, Commissioners. As I call your name, please unmute yourself and verify your presence. Vice Chair Adler? Commissioner Andrus? Commissioner Estes? Commissioner Gill?
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Present.
Chair Hayes-White?
Present.
Commissioner Lopez?
Present.
Commissioner Notch? Commissioner Oyakawa? Commissioner Ruiz?
Here.
Commissioner Snipes?
Present.
Commissioner Sorter?
Here.
Commissioner Topalian?
Here.
And Commissioner Tostin. And that concludes our roll call. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. I hereby call the June 22nd, 2022 meeting of the Advisory Commission on Special Education to order at 10:01 a.m. Commissioner Sorter, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Please stand. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now for housekeeping and announcements. Commissioners, I would like to announce that Stephen Winlock and Kimberly Solomonson have both successfully completed their service to the Advisory Commission on Special Education. Thank you both for your years of service and dedication to students and families of California. It has been an honor to work with each of you. Governor Newsom has appointed two new commissioners, Commissioner Heather Snipes and Commissioner Victoria Graff. Commissioner Snipes is here with us today. Welcome. Can you please introduce yourself, tell us your background and current role in education? I now turn over the mic to you.
My name is Heather Snipes, and I currently work for the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project out of El Dorado County Office of Education. My background is in early childhood, and so I'm really, really excited to be here and represent that. And I'm from far northern California up in Humboldt, and I live in the Redwoods. I'm very excited to be here.
All right, Commissioner Snipes, thank you for sharing. Are you ready to take your oath? Follow me down to the podium. Yeah, all right. Please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Heather Snipes,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
that
I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right. Commissioners, I would like to recognize and welcome our new liaison from the State Board of Education, Mrs. Sharon Olkin. Board member Olkin has replaced our previous liaison, Eileen Strauss. Welcome, Board member Olkin. Raise your hand. Member Olkin, during item 4, I will ask you to introduce yourself and please share any updates regarding the State Board of Education. Thank you. All right, Commissioners, I am pleased to announce the return to our original in-person 2-day meeting format. As such, please note and reserve the following meeting dates for the remainder of the 2022 calendar year. The meeting dates are as follows: August 17th and August 18th, October 19th, and October 20th. Again, August 17th and 18th, October 19th and 20th. And then we will return in February for 2023. Okay? All right. And now for the review of the agenda and public comments. Vice Chair Adler, please review the agenda and review the guidelines for providing comments in person and via telephone.
Happy to do so, thank you. So we will start out. We will not have a state budget update today, so we will be moving at 10:15 to our previously scheduled item 2, which is a report from the California Coalition for Inclusive Literacy. Then we will move to lunch at 11:45. We will reconvene from lunch at 12:45 and hear a report from our Special Education Director. At 1 o'clock, we will have commissioner updates and liaison reports. At 1:30, we will have committee report. And 1:45, the annual election of officers, followed by public comment at 2:15, and finally adjournment at 2:30 today. And for our public to comment, I'll turn it over to Michelle.
The public can make comments after each item when the chair calls for public comment in person or by dialing into the number on the screen. I'll read that number now. It is area code 667-770-1381. After dialing in, you will be asked for a participant access code, which is 433-7117. We do ask the public make sure they turn their speakers off on their computers or webcast so that it's muted to avoid feedback sounds during the call. We also ask that those calling in to make a public comment to state their name and any affiliations prior to making comment. You will have 1 minute for public comment.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Item 1 is canceled, so we are now moving straight into item number 2. California Coalition for Inclusive Literacy Update. Presenters Sharon Coyle, Jennifer Levine, and Elisa Torres-Barton will share current initiatives from the coalition. Welcome, ladies. I now turn over the mic to you.
We're excited to speak with you this morning. My name is Jennifer Levine. I am the Director of Professional Learning at CAST.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. My name is Shamron Coyle. I am the Director of the California Coalition for Inclusive Literacy. Very happy to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Elisa Torres Barton, and I am supporting the work at the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools.
So we are going to take you through a presentation today that might not be completely typical of the presentations that you have, just because we are cast and we're not really good at doing straight lecture. We do know from neuroscience that one's emotions can really strongly affect how someone is able to learn. So we start all of our trainings with just a kind of a check-in to see how you all are feeling and where you're at today. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen this image of the blob tree before, but if you can look at, are you all able to see it? Yes, okay, great. So if you can take a look at the image and just kind of think about, where are you right now? How are you feeling at this moment? How engaged are you? How excited are you? How worn out are you? Would anyone like to share out kind of what number they are, how they're feeling at this moment? Go ahead.
I'm going to go with 11 and 12.
12.
Yeah. I'm relying on my fellow commissioners to for energy and to be present.
I picked the same one.
That's awesome. That's great. So we've got a lot of 11s and 12s. Nice. Anyone else want to share out? Go ahead. At 1 and 13. Mm-hmm. Nice. Can you tell us why? Absolutely.
And one is I'm not on. One is I feel like I'm just hanging on because I'm not sure what's next. Although I look at the glass half full it's just the way I look at life, but it's still, hanging on until I know what the next part of my journey is with her. So
much for sharing. I am the mother of a 22-year-old with some mild intellectual disabilities, and I feel your mix of joy and concern. So thank you for sharing out.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Go ahead.
I also agree with 11 and 12. That was kind of my first instinct. Just the coming together part of it is still really cool to me because this is only our second meeting back, and so I really get a lot of energy out of being amongst all of us. But I was just looking at 20, and I also feel that because this is a really important thing for me to do, to come here, and I feel very empowered when I come here. So standing on top of that tree and screaming out all the things I believe in strongly.
Fabulous. Anyone else want to share out? There's no obligation.
I'm going to reach out to my colleagues because I see myself at number 10. So if the room's at 11 and 12, then I'm right there next to you. But, really holding on to the trunk, the foundation, but knowing that, I'm balancing on a ledge. And I need to make some good decisions. It still looks like number 10 is smiling. So I think that's what reached out to me. But, poor number 14 who's already let go, I'm going to lean towards 11, 12 here, lean towards my colleagues for that direction. Yes. Yeah, no one looks like they're going to catch them. But.
I was going to put myself at 10 also. I'm, excited to be here. I feel like there's a ways to go, but that we've gotten to a really good place. So go ahead.
I was just going to say I think it's 14 because there's a glare there, but to me that's like what you said. It's a trust fall, like having fun, like being together. And so, see, this is a good psychological thing. Now we're going to interpret this picture. But I think it's just all those emotions, right? All those emotions together, because as Commissioner Don Hamilton said, it's empowering to be here and just to move forward and the work that we could do as a committee and together. So that's the best part of this. So thanks. Yeah, this is great.
Thank you guys for playing along. I know that's not quite.
My teacher hat sought.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Snipes, I think, was about to say something.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm fully number 7. It's my first time here. I'm clinging to the trunk of the tree. I think my mood is better than 7, but as far as how I'm feeling right now, that's me.
We got you covered. We'll help you hang on. Anyone else that I missed? Great. Well, I do appreciate your playing along and hope that was kind of a nice way for you all to start off the morning and to connect with each other and to kind of share where you are. We're going to start this morning talking about a student named Jade, or actually we're going to let Jade talk for herself. She is, in this video at least, she is an 8th grade student who struggles to learn to read. Has struggled to learn to read, and we'll share the rest out with you after this brief commercial break. Oh, is sound shared on here? It doesn't seem like it is. Is there? Oh, we just might not have shared it out when we shared the screen. That's okay. Oh no, we're not on Zoom. We're not on Zoom. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm doing Zoom finger.
I'm not used to being in person here.
I do that all the time. Deprogram. Right. They're human. They're real.
3D people here. Yeah. The sound is okay?
Yes, it should be. We couldn't hear it in the room, so we wonder.
Oh, is this a tough technical thing of just turning the volume up?
Pretty much.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
I'd open my mouth, but no words would come out. Not because I couldn't speak, because I couldn't read the words on the page. They were jumping around, backwards, blurry. My name is Jade. I'm in the 8th grade, and reading is a huge struggle for me. Teacher would ask me to read in front of the class aloud. I'd open my mouth, but no words would come out. Not because I couldn't speak, because I couldn't read the words on the page. They were jumping around, backwards, blurry, sideways. D was a B, W was an M. I just kept it all to myself. Like, no one can relate to me. This is just my problem, and I have to deal with it. I have to find a way to deal with this. Oh my gosh. I can still remember the names. Idiot, dummy, slow, special ed. It's like every day going through that takes a piece of you. After a while, you just you get this numb feeling, like it just doesn't bother you anymore. That's when you get really worried. That's when you should get really worried. When you get this numbing feeling, someone calls you something, you're like, I don't care. They're right. That's the worst feeling in the world.
Middle and high school students who still struggle with reading.
We wanted to start you off with Jade, so just so that you can keep in mind why we do what we do, and we will follow up. We'll connect back with Jade at the end of the presentation. Oh, sorry. Yep.
There we go.
We thought it'd be fun if you guys could watch us. Me messing up here. So, okay, so you can see that Jade is just this lovely girl, clearly has some awesome skills. She's very articulate. She clearly is an emotional, just loving girl. And yet, her experience in school hasn't validated who she is as a learner. And at CAST, our goal is really to embrace the variability of how each and every individual student learns, and to support teachers and administrators to learn how to create the systems that will support those students to feel to be embraced in how they learn. So we're going to tell you a little bit today just about the work that we do. We'll start out, our first goal is just to help you understand a little bit who CAST is and what our role is in the California Coalition for Inclusive Literacy. We hope that you'll become more familiar with the context of the California Coalition for Inclusive Literacy, which we call CECIL for short. We'll help you to explore some tools and statewide resources that are developed in support of inclusive literacy. You will learn about innovative approaches used by the participating county offices of education for universal design for learning implementation. And we'll explore some possible next steps and supports. So we also know that people learn better when they have a goal in mind for themselves or when they have a question that they are trying to answer. So I'm going to invite you just to take a minute or two. You can jot something on a piece of paper, you can think in your mind, you can write on your computer, but just think about kind of what are you hoping to get out of today's session, and or what are some questions that you have that you're hoping will be answered. And as you keep those in mind, we'll move forward, but at any time, please feel free to raise a hand, ask a question. I hope I'm giving the impression that we're here to support, so there's no formality, and feel free to just raise a hand and ask a question whenever something pops into your mind. And I just want to give CAST's presenter accessibility promise. We do make sure that all of our presentations are accessible. We do this by having simple backgrounds with high contrast. We have captions, although you all are captioning it this time for us, but we always caption our presentations. We provide both digital and hard copies of our materials. You'll see that there's links, shortened links in here for things that you can click on to look at on your own, QR codes and hyperlinks also to access the digital materials. All of our text images and videos have alternative text behind them, so even the blob tree is accessible there to a screen reader for anyone at home who might be using a screen reader. We always use multiple visual, verbal, and text examples, and we give multiple opportunities and options for participation. I will reiterate that. So, does anyone need a paper copy, or would anyone like a paper copy of the slides to take notes on or anything? Oh, you have them. Oh, valuable. So I'll tell you a little bit about CAST. CAST is an educational nonprofit. We are based out of Boston, but we work nationally and internationally. We have three different components to our organization. The founding, the people who founded CAST were actually applied researchers, and so much of what we grow out of is research into the neuroscience of learning. We also have a design and development department. They use that research into the neuroscience of learning to create products, and we're not a for-profit, but kind of models of products that can be used to support education, specifically students with IEPs. And we have a professional learning department that we all here are part of, and our job is to kind of communicate the research to practitioners so that they can apply it in their own setting. We are most well known for being the founders of Universal Design for Learning. And using Universal Design for Learning, CAST supports educators and organizations to apply insights from research to educational design and implementation. I am going to guess that most of you have a general sense of what Universal Design for Learning is, UDL. But I want to offer this kind of visual image for you of what UDL is. In this first picture here, you will see that there are 3 people that are standing behind a wooden fence and trying to watch a soccer game. All 3 of them, each of the 3, are standing on a box in order to see over that fence. We call that equality. That's when everyone gets exactly the same thing, no matter what they need. So the person on the left is probably tall enough that he could see over the fence without the box, but he is still standing on one. The person in the middle is standing on a box and can see over the fence, but the person on the right is standing on a box and still can't see over the fence. In the image labeled equity, we have the same 3 people still standing behind a wooden fence trying to watch a soccer game. But in this image, the tall person is standing on the ground and is able to see over the fence. The middle-sized person is standing on one box and is able to see over the fence. And the shortest person is standing on 2 boxes and is also able to see over the fence. That's what we refer to as equity, when everybody gets exactly what they need. UDL takes a really different approach to this, though. What if the fence were actually a chain link fence that you can see through? We still have 3 people that are very different, right? We still have a person who is tall, a person who is medium, and a person who is short. But there's no longer an advantage to being one or the other. In other words, we can celebrate the diversity, the differences, while still allowing everyone to achieve the same goal. And that is the goal of Universal Design for Learning, to minimize the barriers to learning so that all students can achieve. And I want to tie this back to Jade for a second, because we can't change who Jade is. And honestly, we don't want to change who Jade is. She seems like a phenomenal kid. But imagine if she had been educated in a classroom that really valued who she was, that allowed her to learn in the way that she learns, that minimized her barriers, her barriers to achieving her goals, and yet still valued how she is different and how she is unique. So this is our visual image for what Universal Design for Learning is. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Professional Learning Department at CAST. I'm very proud of our department. I think that UDL has revolutionized the way students learn, but I think that CAST is revolutionizing professional learning. We don't generally do this, have a sage on the stage, standing and lecturing. We really are learner-centered in how we deliver professional development. So our learners might be teachers, our learners might be principals, they might be paraprofessionals, they might be superintendents, but they are at the center of their learning. We believe deeply in and focus on their expertise, because they are all experts in how they learn, in their context, and in what they need. We do this through some really unique, I think, protocols. So we have schools and districts who are working with us can go through a self-assessment where they look at criteria and evaluate where they are in terms of achieving that criteria. We work with PLCs of teachers who will observe a small group of 5 or 8 teachers who will all observe each other and look for trends across all of their classrooms. What are they doing really well? And then they together will focus on what is our next step for growth? What is our next step for learning? We run lesson design studios, which are based on Japanese lesson study, for those of you who are familiar with that, where teachers using design thinking come together to design a universally designed lesson. Then one teacher implements that lesson with their students, while the other teachers observe. The teachers then interview students after the lesson to see what worked and what didn't. And we use a protocol called journey mapping then to map the whole lesson and each student in the classroom, what parts of the lesson worked for them, what parts of the lesson didn't, and what design changes can you make in the future moving forward to support the students who were struggling. We have maker spaces where educators can design their classroom space. They can create their models for long-term implementation, all very hands-on work. We have on-the-job coaching, which Elisa will be telling you about in a little bit, where we shadow coaches into the schools where they will be teaching how to implement UDL and kind of getting some coaching on the sidelines from CAST. We do journey mapping, which I just told you a little bit about, and other design thinking protocols. We have video clubs where teachers volunteer. They film themselves when they have a question about their teaching that they need support with. They show that video to a group of their peers and get feedback from their peers. We have looking at student work protocols where groups of educators get together to analyze student work and what is working well in the classroom and where there needs to be change. And we do consultancy protocols where, again, educators ask their peers for feedback where they need support. So I think we really have done something that's unique, something that's very different from what a teacher or a principal paraprofessional would sit through when they are getting traditional PD. Currently, we work across the country. We have a few international sites, but you can see from this map we are across the entire United States. You'll also see there's a concentration in the Northeast, where CAST was founded, and quite a concentration here in California. On this next slide, you can see kind of all of the areas across the state where CAST is currently working. And here you can see a list of all of the schools and districts that CAST is working in currently in California. The highlighted schools and districts are ones that we're working with through this CECL project. And if you want to explore that more, you'll see in the, that you can click on the link to go to the Google map, and you can zoom in on any part of the country or the world that you would like to. So I'm going to stop there for a second and just see, do you guys have questions? Do you want to take a second to kind of think about process, what we've been talking about, give some feedback?
I have a quick question. So you just went over the design methods, which are those being collaborated with teacher inductions? Are you doing that separately or collaboratively?
We don't currently work with we're working right now through the CECL project with County Office of Education staff who then work with in-service teachers. So we're not working through this project. We are not working with any pre-service teachers. CAST does work with pre-service teachers, and absolutely we use these protocols with them, but not through this project. Yet.
We say yes to everything.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think what you guys are doing is lovely, really. And I read this before coming, and I'm just so excited about this kind of work until I heard Jade say all the kind of negative stuff she was being called, and then like kind of lastly calling her special ed. So I'm like, basically the last one was like calling her my kid. So do you guys have like programs for severely impacted kids?
Absolutely, yes. So our goal is full integration of all students into a general ed classroom, obviously with any services, pull-out services that they request or need outside of the classroom, but absolutely we work with all students. We believe very strongly in integration, yes. And we are going to revisit Jade, just to make sure that you know we're not leaving it on this horrible note.
Where's that blob tree?
Exactly. Yes.
I have a daughter with CP and significant support needs, and she attends CHIME, which is very much a universally designed for learning school. And I've gotten to see firsthand, the practices utilized in the classroom with her and the rest of the students, and it's so different than how I grew up and how I learned, and I'm just really thankful for this, and I believe strongly in it, so it's cool to meet you guys and see you and hear more about it.
Thank you very much for sharing. Okay, I'm going to pass it on to Shamron.
Wonderful. Good morning again. Shamron Coyle here. Thank you for your engagement and your questions so far. So Jennifer kind of gave us the 30,000-foot view of CAST. I'm going to bring the plane down a little bit further into the cloud layer for what this actually looks like for us here in California. And I really want to emphasize the learner-centered approach with this, and I really think that's where we lie within our innovation. Our model and what we're doing is not a one-and-done drop professional learning and step away, excuse me. It is a very much come alongside you, work within your systems and structures to find out the best way for you to go about implementation in this work. So the California Coalition for Inclusive Literacy is a partnership with 5 county offices of education, Los Angeles, Fresno, Santa Clara, Placer, San Joaquin County offices of education, California Department of Education, and CCEE, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. And so what we are able to do with our project model is we have implementation specialists such as Elisa and our team, and we are present and infused and integrated into these 5 county offices of education on a full-time basis. My home office and my place is in Placer County. I am a part of that entire organization in addition to doing this work. So this has really afforded all of us the opportunity to take this work beyond this model and really bring universal design for learning to various aspects within each of these organizations in a very real way. Commissioner, I think it's Sorter, you asked the question about are we supporting pre-service teachers and things of that nature. I will share with you in some of our county offices, for example, in Placer County, I'm part of the administrative credentialing program, and this I live and breathe UDL in everything in my design and in my work, so it's very much becoming integrated into the structures and the resources within each of these 5 county offices of education. We're also equipping each of these 5 county offices of education to continue this work beyond the life of our grant, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about what that looks like. This is our team. You see Jennifer Levine is our Director of Professional Learning at CAST. I am housed at Placer County Office of Education, but I do oversee the entire project. Becky Canham is our implementation specialist supporting both Placer and San Joaquin County offices. Elisa here supports Fresno County. Elise Yerke supports Los Angeles County Office of Education, and Katie Wyatt is based out of the Santa Clara County Office of Education. So we are a very comprehensive, unified team. Some of us worked within these organizations prior to taking on this role, which has been extremely beneficial in looking at long-term impact of this work as well. I think at your last session, you had an overview of the California Systems of Support, if I remember correctly from that last meeting, so I'm happy to see that you have some familiarity with it. But I wanted to point out where our project lies within the egg of the California Systems of Support. We are on the outer rim, and you'll see on the outer rim of what we call the egg of the California Systems of Support. We are part of the Special Education EWIG grant. We partner regularly with many of the other initiatives that are on this outer rim of the grant. We meet regularly with our English learner colleagues, as well as the literacy block grant and the dyslexia grant. We also have partnered with 21 CSLA so far throughout the duration of our work. So we're really taking advantage of the knowledge and expertise of our colleagues, integrating the best of what they have learned through their work, as well as being able to share and create connections and crosswalks with how Universal Design for Learning can support the work of others. So the goals of our project are to build capacity for our educators to make the best of inclusive practices to support all students of all disabilities. And although we are a special education EWIG grant, we do provide supports and services to our general educators as well, which I think is a very critical component We need to really equip all of our educators to have the skills and knowledge that they need to support students moving forward. We are really focused on inclusion, making sure that students with disabilities are included in general education settings across the board and have access to general education curriculum and time with their peers. We have a significant focus on supporting students with overlapping needs, such as English learners, particularly English learners that may also have an IEP. As we all know, there is some significant disproportionality there, and we hope that our work is going to be able to impact that long term. We've also been tasked with some procedures for identifying individuals with disabilities and developing appropriate IEPs and goals for these students. And we're very excited to also be looking at alternative dispute resolution procedures through a universal design for learning lens. We've got some really exciting ideas planned for this in this year rollout of our work. So to address student literacy development for access to grade level content standards in the general education setting, we're working hard to really create a shared vision of inclusion across general education and special education. We really want to take UDL out of the special ed bucket and make it a universally utilized mindset and resource. Our work is really focused on building capacity. We're very concentrated at building the capacity specifically within those 5 county offices of education. And we are continually in design mode and developing resources to support educators specific to the California lens. CAST has been very generous to provide all of these resources, research, procedures, protocols, and they've basically gifted them to us, and they are deeply training myself and our team so that we can interpret and make the best out of this information for the California landscape. We are developing this shared vision by providing information and training on universal design for learning. The capacity building for our model happens very concentrated at the county office level. County office coaches that we are developing in turn work with our local schools and districts. And then we also have connections and communities of practice across our schools and districts and across our counties within the state. And then we also are developing and designing resources for access for all of our educators in the state, and those can be found on our website that Elisa will speak to a little bit later. Our county offices, we will be leaving behind CAST-trained, deeply trained UDL implementation specialists. And what we've observed, particularly in education, is most people have had an introduction to universal design for learning, but rarely does it go beyond that first training where I get very energized. It's very motivating. It speaks to the why of why we became educators in the first place. But what we found is it doesn't go much deeper than that. And so this work has been a gift that we really get to infuse and integrate this work into a long-term implementation plan and really train our county offices to continue to provide this level of support for their local schools and districts. All of this is built around content related to universal design for learning. So county offices and our schools are getting a heavy, deep dose of universal design for learning. All of those procedures and protocols that Jennifer spoke of earlier are part of our delivery model of what we're providing for our schools and our districts. And then we're very excited this year we'll be launching a statewide community of practice that we are going to invite not only the coaches and participants from the Cecil project. CAST is involved in a few other county projects across the state, so we are going to try to unify all of the projects that we know of across the state into one giant community of practice related to universal design for learning. So we can really learn from our successes as well as our stumbles along the way. We know that there are multiple points of entry when approaching learning, specifically also when approaching universal design for learning. And so we're hoping by offering this opportunity for communities of practice, it's going to open more doors for folks to continue the deeper implementation work that they're working on. Our statewide resources are not as deeply entrenched in universal design for learning. If you've had training or have familiarity with it yourself, you know that it is sometimes can be a heavy cognitive load. So our statewide resources are really focused on universal design for learning is definitely infused into them, but it is really a focus on inclusive literacy and the best practices for engagement and inclusion across the board for our students within literacy, but also across content areas. Our reach so far, we have deeply trained 405 educators. This is beyond an introduction. This is looking at protocols, changes of practice, potential systems shifts as the work continues to deepen. Those 405 educators are potentially reaching and touching and impacting over 28,000 students so far in our work. Because of the unique model of how we are rolling out our project, you can see that our 5 counties on this slide have various kind of a wide range of numbers. Los Angeles County is supporting 5 districts, and those 5 districts are branching out into 29 schools. Fresno has 6 districts and 12 schools. San Joaquin is 3 districts, and I'm going to actually say 5 schools. I got a text message yesterday that we had another project school that wants to jump on board. We're really happy about that. Santa Clara County has 2 districts and 6 schools, and Placer County currently has 4 districts and 7 schools. This is a wide variety of schools. We serve preschool, elementary, middle, and high school, as well as we have one of our project schools that is in a juvenile detention facility as well. So we're really trying to have a broad, diverse reach to make sure that we are able to support the efforts across the board, again, with those multiple points of entry and different contexts for learning. I'm going to pause and take a breath and ask you to pause and think and ponder. And I'd love to hear any questions or feedback that you have so far as well.
Do you have any plans to provide outreach or, and training to some of the smaller rural counties in the state?
Yes, we do. Actually, I can speak directly to that. One of the partnerships projects that CAST is also working with is the Far North Literacy Consortium. That is, I always forget the 4th county. I think it's Shasta, Butte, Tehama, and Modoc. Thank you. Our project partners with the Far North Consortium pretty regularly, and the implementation specialist that supports that project also works directly with our team, and so there's quite a bit of collaboration going on there as well. Smaller districts, for example, Fresno has several that they support as well, so definitely part of the process. We do have some opportunity in this year of the grant to bring additional schools on as the capacity at the county offices allow. But yes, we have the capacity and definitely the desire to do that for sure. Thank you for your question. Mm-hmm.
I didn't see Orange County on your list, so I know that they definitely need your work. So I look forward to seeing them on the list.
We actually partner with Orange County quite a bit. The California UDL Coalition is a grassroots organization, and Orange County is very much at kind of the leadership role in the work that we're doing with that. The coalition meets on a regular basis, and the goal of the coalition is to continue to drive this work forward across the state, and the coalition eventually hopes to be one of those connecting pieces so that we can continue, so that this work reaches beyond even our reach and begins to infuse itself across the state into our schools. It's already in our policies, but we really want, this project's goal is to really bring it to life. Thank you for your question.
It's more of a comment than a question, but just, thinking about and reflecting on the presentation thus far, really thinking about the integration and overlap of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction sort of literacy goal of ensuring that all third graders read by 2026, and sort of thinking about UDL's role in that, and particularly for our students with disabilities across the state. So again, just looking at sort of I know you sort of sit at a unique part of the egg, if you will, but really, the efforts that you're taking to expand will certainly play into those goals that the superintendent has as well.
Yeah, we are, again, we collaborate very regularly with a lot of the other partner initiatives on the outer edge of that egg. Members of our team are participating in the 2-year dyslexia training. We're offering modules through 21 CSLA. So any and all opportunities that we have to get out of our silos, so to speak, and make this a more integrated approach is definitely our goal. And I think the investment that CAST has made in having in-house trained people part of our county offices of education, they're not going to go anywhere once the grant sunsets. And so this is really allowing the work to continue beyond that. Also important to note that the coaches that we're training at our county offices of education come to us as content area experts. So these are our professional development leads and our coaches that are STEM and math and world languages and literacy and preschool. And so as we move through these trainings and we're working with schools and staff, there's a lot of questions that we get about what does this look like in a world language class, and what does this mean in a math class? And I teach science. I don't teach kids how to read. What does this mean for me? And so our content area experts are really able to bring their knowledge and expertise of those lenses and apply it to the principles of universal design for learning. So they're really able to answer those questions from our educators in a very real way. They're also invested in their community and have the relationships established with many of the schools in the district. So that's been a critical component of our work as well. Any other questions?
Could I just make a comment? Oh, it's on. So this sounds like it's one of those things that every student will benefit from, and the teachers when they're trained, especially coming out of the remote learning. I've noticed that a lot of students, especially in the younger grades, were struggling, especially second grade has been one of the areas, grades that's been struggling. But it seems like it's a good plan of action to have, and the program in itself to apply, that everybody benefits from it and grows at their own level. So, thank you for presenting.
Very, very learner-centered approach, being very proactive and putting, in our case, the adult learners at the center, but then our adult learners are putting their students at the center, and that's what this is all about. So thank you for your questions and comments. Okay, I will hand it over to my colleague, Elisa.
Good morning. New Yorker, born and raised in New York, so I will try to speak slow, even though I'm super passionate about this. It feels really nice. I'm going to put my mom hat on, of co-parent of 7, biological of 3, and I saw your hearts when we talked about the blob. I see my own student, and so part of why we're so passionate about this, and we put on all the different hats, because we're all former site leaders and district leaders, and definitely the county office, know that what's behind all this, even though the slide in front of you shows you that UDL has been on paper for how long, right? So what I'm about to share is, so Jennifer went 30,000 views, Sharon went 15. I'm going to get a little bit more granular. I'm going to have that teacher hat on most of the time as I share some of the thinking behind our hypothesis of what our educators might need, and then as a result, our learners might need. And so again, in front of you, every single framework, even the littles, right, the preschool. One of my team members at the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools is in early childhood. I am a secondary math teacher. Other than being a mom, I had never been exposed to the littles, and we have so much to learn from each other. And she said, UDL is in my preschool framework. And so it's been really exciting to be part of that group that says, oh, it's on paper, how do we make it come to life? So that's just a little bit of those nuggets from behind the scenes and coming from that lens. So we know as leaders, right, that implementation of anything, there's lots of moving parts, right? We know it's a big, large system. And so we are aware that school climate and environment for sure impact implementation of anything, right? We are also aware that teaching and learning, a focus on that component, it's very important for implementation. Leadership and management, right? All the moves that we can have implement, sometimes in classrooms, we close our door and we do our best. But if the system's not there, right, we could have these pockets of excellence. So we know leadership and management is crucial. But our focus for this grant, right, even though we're tempted, because I put my high school principal hat on, I'm like, no, we can't ignore climate culture, right? It could be a beautiful slide, but if my students don't feel welcome when they walk in, what does it matter that I've designed these amazing lessons, right? But truly our focus is PL, and it's been our bang for our buck thus far. So we're super excited just to let you know, yes, we're aware of the other domains of implementation, but our focus has truly been the professional learning. So another representation, we've talked a little bit about already about the different resources. So in front of you, that triangle is just another representation about that we're deeply, I have one foot in Fresno County, right? At the Fresno County website, I'm an executive leadership coach, hired within, but yet I'm also a CAST, on the CAST website, implementation specialist. And so that deep learning where I can take my context, right, and institutional knowledge, and then the UDL learning has been very powerful, just even as myself as a leader, right? As I think back, man, if I was in the classroom, right? We always think back. If I was in the classroom, if I was a site leader, what might I do differently? But it's been important as we keep it learner focused, right? And then, of course, the county-wide resources with, for example, for me, I have a team of about 12. I have 6 coaches going out, Zoom world, right? Going out and supporting our districts. And then, of course, there's lots of support there. And then, of course, the California statewide resources, which they're free to all, right? They're free for all. And so that's exciting, and we'll have a little bit of time to focus on that. So, commissioners, as we were thinking about the 5 of us, as we become a little PLC family of equity warriors, right? We were thinking about what is it if I was a site leader or if I was a teacher, what are the pieces that are barriers to me right now? Even forget the pandemic for just a second if we could. What are some of the things that would be very much in support of inclusive practices in my classroom? And so at the statewide level, we thought, okay, what could we share with all? We created what's called a Got a Minute learning series. That is in anticipation to that barrier of like, look, I only have 10 minutes before I have to go to my next thing. And so we'll go into that a little bit more, but just thinking of that barrier, we create a Got a Minute. So 10 minutes, if you only have 10, do this. If you only have 20, if you only have 45, and I'll delve into that a little bit more. Of course, the webinars, which has been really neat as far as people from all over the world have joined, and even parents, which makes our hearts so full, right? When parents are emailing Sharon, hey, my 3rd grader, right? So it's been really neat to have that wide net of access for anybody who would like to jump in on those, and those are archived on our website. And then top tips is like, I literally have just 10 seconds. Give me like a top tip on a bucket, and I can print it out. And so we created something around that. And then a learning design feature, and again, I'll go into it more in a second, but it's essentially we've done the digging around a plethora of resources that live in CAST's learning design website, and we said, hey, around this topic, here are 4 ways to engage. Let's say writing, so you got a minute on writing, a webinar for writing, a top tips for writing, and a learning design feature. And then, so like Shamron alluded earlier, where it's more about the inclusive literacy focus. If you have UDL background, you completely pick up on what we're putting down, right? As far as, oh, that's UDL, but we're not exactly calling out the guidelines explicitly, right? To make it even more accessible. At the county offices, though, as we've already shared, and school districts, we do the Intro to UDL series, which is 4 sessions where there's a lot of cognitive dissonance, where we get to, at the county office, just on our own, be learners first and not worry about what it looks like lived, right? I've had some great conversations with my team of like, Elisa, I believe this, but what about that, right? I've been doing this for 20 years. How do we reconcile that? So having an opportunity to have those conversations has been wonderful for implementation, an authentic, organic, sustainable way. And then the deeper dives through workshops that will continue the next year, journey mapping. So some of these tools that Jennifer shared with you is what makes CAS-PL different. And I've been in education since I was 21 years old, friends, as a teacher. And I've been through a lot of binders, if that sounds familiar, right? You walk out with your binder, do this training and that. No, now it's Google Drives. But this piece about the learner center, that at every moment is about the learner in front of us, regardless of the size, life-changing. Again, if I were to go back as a site leader, very different. And so we're equipping our coaches, so the team of 12 at Fresno and Laco and so on and so forth, we're equipping them with these protocols, and we get to practice them ourselves first before we facilitate that with the district that is part of it, right, with a deep UDL focus. And so, again, we sat down, the five of us, and said, what topics would shift practice, right? What topics would get us beyond the knowing-doing gap, right? And so, again, it's a hypothesis. We are testing it out, and we said we have to start with mindset. And so there's 4 ways to engage around mindset. Goal setting, right? Bottom line, where do we start? How do we go from there? Assessment, barriers, options, expert learning, self-reflection, literacy across the curriculum, right? Because it doesn't just, even as a math teacher, have to swallow. I'm like, yes, it's true. Literacy lives in math. Meaning making and writing. So these were the topics that the 4 ways to engage for this last academic year were in support of. And so the website is cecil.cas.org, and this is just another visual representation of the 4 ways to engage in each topic. And so here's a little bit more of a narrative that I was alluding to. So the Got a Minute Learning Series, we know that time is an educator's kryptonite, regardless of pandemic or not. The Got a Minute Learning Series recognizes this challenge and provides educators with flexibility to choose their learning pathway based on the amount of time they have available. The series is designed around chunks of time. Each module is divided into 3 chunks. The 10 minutes is the what and the why, right? So depending on what they're curious about. 20 minutes is the how, and the 45 minutes is application. So if you've done the first 10 minutes, when you hit the 20, you just have an additional 10 minutes, right? They're all included in each other. Then the top tips, they're designed to jog thinking, spark conversation, and encourage deeper learning. These one-doc stops present best practices related to the monthly topic. Let me rewind to the Got a Minute. We also, commissioners, created a slide deck, again, that principal had, so that leaders can do a slide deck, or there's a module, a platform that you could do the course. So if I'm a leader, I can just take that slide deck and plan out my PL for the year if I wanted to, or just for a couple of series. And so again, through that lens in mind, it could be asynchronous, it can also be synchronous. The highlighted feature located in learning design is a digital learning space, a place to connect with a community of educators and resources to prepare today's learners for our fast-changing world. These resources have been curated around our monthly topics. Again, instead of just saying, go to this website and find something, we thought, what if we pull something out related to that topic to help support our learners? And then, of course, the webinar series. They're archived already for this last year. There was a 9-part series, especially relevant as we were welcoming the kiddos back to the classroom. We explored how to support literacy development of all students in inclusive and equitable learning environments through the lens of universal design for learning. Educators grappling with accelerating learning in the face of barriers and student variability found this series timely and relevant. I will pause my fast talking. Any thoughts, questions? Normally at a PD, we would just get people to explore the resources, and we have a link to a website, but please do. Go ahead, Commissioner.
So your program sounds lovely. However, did I hear any partnerships or any connections with your local universities to catch these teachers before they get hired with the school districts and county offices of education?
Yeah, it's part of this project. I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to speak to it, but as part of this project, we are collaborating with the districts that have self-selected and say, hey, I want an early adopter about this. This has been my LCAP or my SPSA. I want to learn about it. If a university, I have a couple of presentations coming up in the fall. The universities are having conferences and they say, hey, I hear this is happening in Fresno. Would you like to come speak to? So we're super interested, but it's not formal part of the project.
Yeah, we don't have a formal connection with the university. Many of our local county offices of education support pre-service teacher programs as well as administrative credentials to earn credentials and clear credentials. And so we are involved and integrated in those, but we do not yet have a connection with university for pre-service programs. We have partnered with some on some webinar series and things of that nature, but nothing long-term at this point with universities.
Thank you. I think that's a good next step to catch those teachers. I think Commissioner Sorter was kind of hinting around it too, like induction and such.
I just jump in and say that's a large focus at CAST. It is not part of this grant, but CAST works deeply with universities. We have an entire department that works with university level professors, and then our department works with pre-service teachers. So that's a huge focus of CAST. It's just not written into this grant.
And also the community college level, so we can catch those child development teachers.
And we're actually really interested right now in kind of alternative pathways to becoming teacher certified. So thinking about apprenticeship programs and how we can support, I guess, different sources than the traditional sources of, of how we get people through the pipeline to become teachers, particularly given this shortage that we're all seeing and experiencing right now.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner.
Literacy is something I'm particularly interested in and passionate about, especially for students with the most significant support needs. And I feel like it's something that maybe doesn't have as high a priority in schools as it should. The literacy and communication aspect of students who are non-speaking, who have significant physical needs, all of that sort of stuff. But I also think even a school that's doing a good job with it, there's just not enough time in the day. So I'm wondering if there are any resources or supports that you could recommend or that you offer for parents for continuing that learning and support at home.
Yeah, I think I would point you to CAST has an Accessible Educational Materials Center, AEM. So if you go to CAST, actually I think it's aim.cast.org. There's all kinds of resources there. We also partner with Indeed.org to reach out, do outreach to parents specifically. Yes.
I'll kind of piggyback on what Ms. Hamilton commented on because, as I mentioned, my daughter just graduated with a certificate because she not yet can have a diploma, but hopefully that'll be soon. I had her in all her general ed inclusive classroom, and the obstacles that we found was manipulating or modifying that curriculum so that it's beneficial for her to learn. And I feel that some other parents, through the CAC and being part of those meetings, the consensus was because they weren't getting a diploma and a certificate, the emphasis was not on reading. And even now with the recent IEP that I had, it's more working with life skills, which I want to continue with reading and curriculum, and that's been quite a battle. So I feel that the need for modifying, and because they're all at different levels in that classroom, we want to make sure there's growth in there, and there is more supports that's needed in the classroom. And it comes down to obviously money and having more supports. But when you have 35 kids in a classroom and one teacher who's fabulous and wants inclusion, it's quite difficult to do all that's needed for these kiddos.
Absolutely agree. One of the central tenets of UDL is the idea that all students we don't do different goals for different students. All students get the same goal. If you imagine a GPS where you're going to put in your destination, we may be starting in different places. We may even start in the same place, but to have different routes to get there. The idea is that we don't dumb down the curriculum. If literacy is one of the goals, literacy is the goal for everybody. And what changes from person to person is how they get there. And universal design is the idea that you can think about those pathways, those routes beforehand, and design that into the curriculum instead of addressing it after the fact and pulling someone out to, miss their regular gen ed classes while focusing on some skill that they should have been taught in the gen ed classroom. So absolutely agree. I think that's a fabulous point to make.
Okay, I'm trying to get my thoughts together here. So the California-wide resources, actually, just phenomenal, right? Having the podcast, webinars, training videos, all of those, wonderful. So if you were in a district that was not listed and you wanted to be a part, it's too late to be a part, correct? Am I right? Okay. So if you were a literacy coach and you couldn't get your district to be a part, the resources, though, they could go to, if they found out about this, they would have access to them and be, I'm going to say, self-taught type of thing, sort of.
All the statewide resources are free and accessible to everybody across the state. We are leaving those 5 county offices of education. I don't know if we called it like a playbook or a toolkit, or we called it something fun, but they'll be left behind with kind of all of the tools necessary for them to go out and train. So many of our county offices actually work in districts outside their counties, or they work in the regional areas. So the goal is that CAST is leaving behind our intellectual property with you guys, so that you all can continue this work without needing us to be here to do it.
And when will the grant actually sunset? Because I feel like it's like soon. I'm picking up on that. Like, I'm a little worried now, because now I feel like we have a set of teachers, educators coming into the profession that are already going to be behind because our veteran and current teachers are trained, and now we have a gap, right? Am I hearing that? Okay.
So this grant officially ends at the end of next school year. However, the grant was written before COVID existed. And so much of what was worked into the grant for convenings in person, for travel between districts, for subs, hasn't been spent yet. So we are throwing in a plea to maybe extend for 1 year, not more funding, but just to use the funding that we haven't spent for an extra year. And then I don't actually know, do the EWIGs, can they be reapplied for year after year, or I don't know if it's something that we could reapply for in the future.
Boy, you set that up nicely for
Yes.
us. Thank you.
It's going to look natural now. Slide 47 now. Okay. All right. Just like we included Jay's voice, we thought we'd include some of our adult learners' voices as a result of their participation in CECL. This one participant shared, "This opportunity has given me a chance to reflect on my own past teaching practices and make plans to improve future teaching and practices. I have learned the why of UDL and see the benefits for my students. Not only will I continue to meet my students where they are, I have also learned the strategies to remove barriers by being proactive. I have obtained additional UDL resources and strategies to add to my teaching toolbox." And on the heels of what Sharon shared before, sometimes those one-day trainings, right, make us feel either, oh, we're gung-ho and yes, this is amazing, but how? Or overwhelmed, I don't even know where to begin. And so it's been really neat to have an opportunity to have the space to be in that learner space. Another participant shared, "My practice will forever be impacted because I'm constantly considering why things are so important and how students and adult learners learn and become engaged." The third one said, "It has greatly benefited my practice and knowledge. I had attended trainings and workshops in the past, and perhaps I needed multiple exposures in order for it to sink in." We know that about learning, right? Layers. Additionally, this year's direct work with the districts and applying our learning has been the richest experience of all, being that it was putting into direct practice what we were learning through theory and research. And so that moment where I, Elisa, can be vulnerable with my team and say, you know what, I am wrestling with this, how might we, has been integral in making this be an authentically, part of our professional learning at Fresno anyway, and I'm sure across the state. So what's coming up next? Statewide, as a result of the feedback we got from the webinars, we're doing a 3-part series on different topics that were hot topics last year. And so we're going to have an accessibility webinar series, an IEP webinar series, and an alternative dispute resolution procedures. We're collaborating with some colleagues around the state, some experts around these topics, and so we're going to do a webinar series on those for the fall, winter, and spring. The UDL toolkit that Jennifer just talked about, and then possible project extension would be our pie in the sky, right? Because we see how we're on the cusp of something here, and so we would hate to, not that we will let it go anyway, but that's just another thought. At the county level, monthly communities of practice, deeper dives into UDL via workshops, accessibility training, which it's something that previously to this life, it was just a thing I could click on my slides. But truly through this learning, accessibility is this whole other world of like, oh my goodness, this would have been so amazing, even for myself as an English learner, to have this tool. And so we're supporting our coaches with that, and of course supporting the districts as a result. UDL credentials, and so my entire team will have UDL level 1 and level 2 credentialed from CAST, and then a final project convening. And then at the school and district level, school-wide scaling, right? Depending on the district, we've been able to contextualize this work. I have some districts where they have the early adopters from K-8. They've chosen 5 to 6, right? The teachers have volunteered or voluntold, right, to be part of this learning. And so we'll get to plan and co-design with them what might implementation look like wall-to-wall at a site, at a grade level, depending on context. Addition of more schools, and then of course the UDL credentials are also offered at our sites. So in support of future implementation, the UDL credentialed implementation specialist at each county office will remain, right? So just like I was there before this project, I remain. And as you could imagine, because I've had relationships with our colleagues at the county office, I have people that are not part of CNI, curriculum and instruction. Hey, Elisa, I heard that there was a, can you give me some feedback on those conversations? Because imagine if at the county level, at the system level, we were being inclusive. We were wrestling with those concepts of inclusion at every layer. A deep understanding of implementation science and the time and the processes needed to do the work. We did not come with one size fits all. For my 6 districts, it's very different conversations for every coach, and so my job is to coach the coach around how to support that work. And then implementation training has been integrating into existing systems within and across education in California and beyond. Therefore, if I have a phone call from any department in our county office, when I said we all say yes, if somebody says, I want to learn about, yes, let's learn together. Or teach me about your world and how might it make sense with ours. And so we are very excited about that work. So back to you in a way. We thought, okay, in order to support our own learning, what from your seats, from your hats, what initiatives might CECL and CAST partner with? We've taken some guesses and partners that we've invited ourselves to Zoom conferences to kind of learn from them and see how we can collaborate. But what might you see from your lens? And then in support of others, what upcoming initiatives might we? And I think you already shared some of your thoughts on that, right? Some of your hints. And then, so we also thought about universal pre-K and community schools, et cetera. And then what are some ideas or suggestions you have to help our design in 2022-23? And then what else might we consider? What is something that we haven't thought about, right? Because our lens is what it is. Should we pause now for any thoughts, questions? Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Etler.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so yeah, definitely the community schools grant. There's also the learning communities for student success. Am I saying that right? Learning Communities for Student Success grant also that has just been released, or awards have just been released that would be ideal for this kind of thing. I think my question is, you're saying that the grant, that your current grant is ending, but there are 53 county offices without, what did you call them? I'm sorry. Without implementation specialists. So I would ask, is there a way to consider allowing some of those other county offices to have this benefit?
So there's, Shamron alluded to or talked about the California Coalition for UDL. And this is an awesome group of folks from across the state who just got really inspired by universal design and wanted to be able to support educators across the state to implement. And CAST is kind of an honorary member of this group, and so we help to support them in terms of thinking about what does large-scale implementation look like. And so they are kind of gathering resources from across the state, mapping out what exists already for free or for pay for different parts of learning about UDL, and then also kind of filling in, CAST obviously can teach on any part of UDL, so filling in the holes with how CAST can support. Also, CCEE has taken UDL on as a huge initiative, and they also are supporting grants for actual LEAs to apply to get support from CAST in order for them to be able to implement UDL in their schools and their districts. So there's California is surprisingly rich with opportunities, and I feel that although this grant is sunsetting, there are many options out there. I think our work in the next year is really going to be connecting those and making sure that there are ways for a teacher in Timbuktu to say, I really want to learn this, where do I go? And we're getting quite a bit of support from CCEE in that.
Thank you for that. And then just one other question. Is there a space within UDL for an SEL component, the social emotional aspect?
Yes, that's a great question. And actually, I would argue that UDL kind of jumped into that space before SEL was a term.
We're not competitive, though. We're not competitive.
But we do offer lots of workshops kind of on the overlap. How do you work an SEL curriculum, or how do you use the UDL lens to design an SEL curriculum? So absolutely, those two frameworks work beautifully together. But our founder, David Rose's kind of most famous quote, which I'll say is from maybe 1985 or something, I'm making that number up, is that learning is emotional work, and so that we must focus first on the emotions. So, yeah.
Commissioner Gill.
Thank you for your presentation. You're doing so much wonderful work, and I love that you keep putting your mom hats on and then your educator hats on. And thank you for the opportunity to be on the receptive end of being a learner in this space. I really appreciate the questions for consideration, because it's not often that you bring in such a high quality program and still want to improve on that. So thank you for being receptive to that. I'm focused on slide number 5, which talks about your reach. And for me, this is profound to look at numbers and to look at the extent of students and educators that you're connecting with. What's missing for me are the parents, because I believe that parents understanding the equity slide that you proposed helps us to be informed partners on the IEP team. And it helps us to understand the approach in which we're looking for success for our student. So as parents, if we're constantly looking at how to change the flower, and our teachers, our educators are looking at how to change the environment, then we're not on the same page. And the IEP team will struggle if we're not speaking the same language or looking at the same approach. So I highly encourage you to reach and to collect data on parents, and to work with your county offices of education to create a module that is parent-centered, so that we too can understand how the success of UDL is helping to support our students, so that we can support our educators and be part of the team. So I'm looking for that data. And I know that you also added innovative opportunities and approaches as one of the goals of UDL. So I'm excited to see you grow on that and push us in ways that help us to build a more inclusive framework for parents to be at the same table of power. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love the idea of creating a module for parents, specifically for parents. We work with administrators in terms of how to universally design parent engagement, how to universally design outreach to parents, and hearing the voices from parents, but we don't have anything that where we directly are teaching the parents. I love that idea. Thank you very much.
And thank you for elevating that. Our focus this year on our special education, IEP, and ADR resources are very parent-centered. So definitely the element, but agreed, love the idea of a module specific to that. And I know with our partnerships, we also have some folks that are very much entrenched in parent involvement opportunities, and there'd be a great opportunity there for us to collaborate. So thank you for that.
All right, my roots are in early childhood special education, and did I hear any partnerships with perhaps Head Start, Early Head Start, and even the regional centers? Because if we have the initiatives to have children read by the 3rd grade, I think we need to really embed and focus on early literacy and reading, and access to reading and reading pictures very early with our early childhood teachers like myself.
Agreed. We have a number of our school sites that are participating that are state-run preschools, so we are currently working with them within, I want to say, at least 2 of our 5 counties, so Early Start, Head Start, and then some of our county offices. I'll speak for Placer, for example. We're doing an early learner, I believe we have it called a UPK boot camp coming up that we will be providing for our educators here locally in Placer County, so capitalizing on those opportunities. It's been interesting to be in the preschool setting because I think at its core and it's universally designed to begin with. And I think as we transition our students away from preschool into K-12, we lose some of those elements of really focusing on our students walking in the door as expert learners. And so trying to reconnect with what we know as best practices that have started already in that early education setting. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, I'm totally stealing one of your slides. The presenter accessibility promise, I never seen it laid out like that. Love it. I think that should be a requirement at any conference doing presentation proposals. So love that.
The requirement at CAST.
But it goes into the accessibility trainings. You're doing that because we were doing that at the Riverside County Office of Education. We started doing that with so many updates, Twitter, Microsoft, Google, having those accessibility features coming out. But making sure staff use them, but also recognizing that we have staff with low incidence disabilities. So it's your own colleagues that don't sometimes have access. It's not just the students. So kudos for that. And a fabulous presentation. Thank you.
I encourage you to point and click and right click images and look at alternative text. If you haven't already, perhaps explore some resources with the screen reader.
I was just going to say, it is if you have never used a screen reader before, it is quite eye-opening. So if you want to try reading through these slides with a screen reader, I think you would learn a lot if you've never done that before.
Well, and it's important for our students with disabilities because when they go to a post-secondary education, right, assistive technology, there's a whole bunch of research on success when they have access to it at the high school level when they go on to college. So making, again, that connection between the educators at all levels.
We're sold. We're sold.
I don't need to sell you anymore. Okay.
All right, so thank you.
Do you want to show
the
last one?
Oh, Jade, we don't want to leave you.
We can't leave you hanging,
yes.
Jade.
Yes. She's walking into trees.
In the 1st grade, and I am reading a book meant for toddlers. I am a very sad person. I would seriously just say that to myself. And then my mom would come in, she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I was reading this book." She's like, "Oh, that's so cute." I'm like, "Mom, I can't read." The teacher talked to me. They said, "We know that you have this ability, and we know how to help you." I would go through one line. She's like, "Okay, stop." And then she said, and then she had on the board, like it was like she already knew I was coming. Each word was separated, and she had this special board with little dots. And she was like, "What does this sound? What is this word?" I'm like, "It's an S, S." And I felt really stupid. But at the end of the day, I could say that sentence. I would just like walk around at the dinner table. I'm reading. I'm everywhere in the car. I'm sitting down in my roller skates reading a book. I walked into a treat. I had finished a book, and I felt awesome. And she reads the book, dancing around in my dad's football jersey. She's completed the championship. I'm serious. And the crowd goes wild. I still have that jersey. I do. And it smells terrible.
Yeah, it never gets old watching, hearing her.
So you have our names and email addresses. Please feel free to reach out with any questions that you have. And truly, we're just so honored that you guys invited us here today and would love any thoughts and feedback that you have for us.
Grateful for the opportunity. This is our heart's work, and we are a small but mighty team of 5 across the state, hoping to have a really long-term significant impact on making a difference in providing access and inclusion for all of our students. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much, ladies. This was a great presentation. Commissioners, are there any further questions for this team before they step back?
Could you just let us know again what CAST stands for?
We no longer use the acronym. So CAST was developed in the mid-'80s, and they were designing special technology for students with disabilities. So it stands for the Center for Applied Special Technology. But because we no longer create special technology, we just go by CAST.
No wonder we couldn't find anything online.
That is why you can't find it, yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Grateful. Thank you very much.
All right. Can we load up the slide for public comments? All right, public, if you have any comments, please use the number. Please dial in at this time.
We have no callers.
All right, we have no callers. All right, so we are 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Would you guys like to go into lunch, or Heather, would you like to move up your presentation? Commissioners, what do y'all want to do? Heather, would you mind going now and doing your presentation? All right. So we will move right on into item number 3, Special Education Director's Report. And Director Calamise will share an update regarding the Division of Special Education.
I did not want to be the person standing in front of lunch, so happy to go. Good afternoon, or good morning. Happy to see you all here as well. Just a few updates from the Special Education Division in the California Department of Education. Although I know the Department of Finance was not able to attend this morning, I wanted to provide just a brief update of sort of where we're at in a couple of items related to last year's budget items of 2021, 2022. And then just a little bit of a preview and a snippet of what's on the docket for 2022, 2023, recognizing that, things still right now are not finalized. But I did want to sort of circle back to last year's budget cycle to provide an update. There were 2 items from last year's budget cycle that have been pushed to this year's sort of budget cycle, if you will. The first one is the non-public school study, the MPS study. So that study has not gone away. And so we'll be releasing sort of a competitive bid process this year. And so that work will continue into the 2022-2023 3 cycle. So again, we are eagerly, ready for that study to sort of roll out to see what we learn around the topic of non-public schools in the state of California. So that one still is on deck to start this later on this year. The other one as well is the IEP facilitation. And that project, if you recall, is to really sort of research and determine what it would take to bring sort of facilitated IEPs to the state of California.
Welcome to Zoom. Please press pound, then enter your meeting ID, followed by the pound sign again.
Okay. So the facilitated IEPs, going back to that, I think, again, that sort of work dovetails nicely with the alternative dispute resolution work that's happening across the state. And so we're eagerly, again, that study will launch, or that research will launch later on this year as well. Again, it will be a competitive process, but those projects are still scheduled to go out. Just a couple of other budget items I wanted to highlight. This is not inclusive of the entire proposed budget that's out there.
5, 0, 8, 9.
It's like me when I'm trying to dial in.
I'm sorry to interrupt. There is a problem with Zoom, and technology would like to take us to take a little break.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Are we back on? Yes. All right, Heather, sorry for the interruption. Can you please continue your item?
Absolutely. All right. So up on tap in this year's yet to be finalized proposed budget, just again want to underscore the proposal out there in terms of strengthening Part C services to Part B transitions. And so, we at the California Department of Education, and particularly our Special Education Division, looks forward to, I think, uplifting and shining a spotlight in terms of internal resources that will allow us to effectively partner not only with our early education division, but also our educational partners across the state as well, in terms of, DDS as well, including to ensure that we know Part C to Part B transitions are critical and oftentimes complex for our families and students to navigate. Another one, 2 projects that, started last year in last year's budget cycle, but will continue in this year's budget cycle, is the alternative pathways to a diploma. So that work will continue. That work will span, as it's written currently, into 2024 with a report that will go to the legislature as well, that will essentially map out a pathway to a diploma for every single student with a disability and phase out the certificate of completion. So again, that work will continue this year, and that will be facilitated by the California Department of Education. The other work that will continue this year as well is the IEP template work. As you know, last year that work group wrapped up that report as well. So again, that work will continue for the next 2 years. And so 2024, a report will go to the legislature. Different than last year is this year, as it's written currently and proposed, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, or CCEE, will be responsible for conducting that work as well. So again, that work will continue, and we're certainly excited to dig in further and really, I think, push our state forward as well. The other sort of budget item from last year, actually was last year, is really the Family Empowerment Center expansion. And so we recently have onboarded 13 new Family Empowerment Centers across the state of California. So we're getting closer to our goal to ensuring that every single region across the state has a Family Empowerment Center. And so we are very happy earlier this month to onboard them, and they will continue their training throughout the summer as well. So just a little bit of a snippet of the budget, and obviously we're getting very, very close here. And so obviously in August we'll have a more comprehensive sort of report in terms of what the budget means for our students across the state as well. a couple of key pieces of legislation. Again, these bills are not all encompassing in terms of in relation to students with disabilities, but a couple of ones that we're watching. Particularly, there is a bill out there that would add fetal alcohol syndrome as an eligibility category to OHI. And potentially could be huge for our state, but certainly that is one that we are certainly tracking at this point in time. There is one that I did want to note, AB 2427. That was the proposed legislation that would lower the age of transition from 16 to 14. As you know, California is one of the handful of states that does have age 16 as the official age of transition. And so that bill has not picked up momentum and will not be moving forward. So for currently as it stands right now, that bill, like I said before, is at a standstill. The other piece of legislation that I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on that is currently making its way through and coming on the heels of our presentation from Cecil here and our CAST team is really SB 1113, and that is really termed the UDL or inclusion bill. And so that bill would require, I believe it's by 2024, the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing to revise its admin credentials and performance expectations to include topics like inclusion and UDL. And so it would require administrators preparation programs to ensure that faculty are trained in a variety of topics, including UDL as well. So we're seeing a familiar theme pop up in various pieces of legislation and projects across the state as well. It would also require California Department of Education to, in consultation with the Commission, to develop and disseminate joint guidance across the state as well. And so I think for us, excited about the possibility of again, really looking at and providing some guidance that can be utilized across the state as well for our educational partners. And then finally, the last piece of the bill would also create a sort of a guidebook and video modules to go along with that as well. So again, certainly this is a focus area of our legislature across the state. So we're looking forward to seeing how this bill progresses and perhaps is implemented in the coming years as well. In terms of division-related activities in our special education division, we are, of course, busy across our divisions with a number of initiatives and projects in addition to our sort of federally mandated work as well. Just a couple of highlights from our sort of our transition side of things. We had staff participate in the State Rehabilitation Council quarterly meeting earlier this month. And, we are in partnership with the Department of Rehabilitation. We're able to really discuss and determine areas, in terms of how are we preparing students with disabilities for the success in the workplace, right? And so key areas that our team discussed along with the Department of Rehab really sort of looked at sort of pre-employment transition services, specifically for students ages 16 through 22, and then also in the relation to the student services program that is housed in the Department of Rehabilitation's office. These services, and it's called the Student Services Program, are actually obviously available in every county to every student across the state as well. So I'm really sort of digging into and deepening our focus on transitions and successful post-secondary transitions for students with disabilities across the state. The second, and sort of the other end of the spectrum, I call it the on-ramp to education, is that our division and our staff members in our division are participating in a cross-sector work group along with our partners in the early education division and multilingual supports division as part of the national P3 preschool through third grade center. And so we're engaging at a national level in terms of really looking at the California Department of Education, helping us develop a strategic plan in California as it relates to P3 on three areas of focus. The first one being systems to ensure sustainability. building a continuum of high-quality learning opportunities, and then also building and supporting a workforce that specializes in early learning as well. So really ramping up in the P3 space, and certainly looking forward to partnership and collaboration across the state as well. Just a couple more updates here as well is the, let me just skip here to, speaking of sort of early learners, I just want to keep on that vein, is the Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, has recently released their State Personnel Development Grant, or the SPDIG, as we like acronyms. And so that grant sort of application, it's a competitive grant. It's open to every single state. And so last year, the last 5 years, California focused on adolescent literacy, and that work spanned 9 LEAs across the state. The focus of the SPDIG this year, and this sort of 5-year cycle, as determined by OSEP, will really focus on helping state education agencies in reforming and improving their systems of personnel preparation and professional development in early intervention, education, and transition services in order to improve outcomes for students with disabilities. So again, we're seeing the focus swing towards our early intervention, preparing our educators for ensuring that our students have the strongest start possible as well. So again, that process, it's a fast turnaround for that application. So we will be submitting that to OSEP for consideration in late July as well. And finally, one other sort of piece of information that I wanted to uplift, and that I often repeat, at times, is really ensuring that duly identified students are identified for receiving special education supports and services, and also ensuring that students that have language needs as well are uplifted in the spotlight. We know it's a large contingent of students. We know that there is a need across the state for our educators and school communities to continue to receive resource and guidance from this California Department of Education as well. In relation to some of the current legislation that's out there in terms of the dual language immersion grants, and so the topic of dual language and dual language immersion programs in the context of students with disabilities has really been amplified and ramped up. And so we are continuing to partner with our internal partners of our multilingual supports division in terms of really sort of addressing it via guidance and other resources available through the state, obviously through our SELPA, our statewide system of support, and our SELPA content leads, and engaging the Imperial County SELPA along with that as well. As we know that we have heard, just some variance in terms of interpretation across the state in terms of students with disabilities' ability to participate in those programs, and we want to ensure that students have full access as appropriate to those programs as well. So look for some upcoming communication and guidance around that as well. I mean, other than that, it is a busy time for us here, and looking forward to, sort of wrapping out this sort of fiscal year and school year, if you will, and transitioning into 2022, 2023. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Calamise. Commissioners, are there any questions for the director at this time?
I do, so I was going to ask you this question. So the thought behind, let me go back to that bill where they're trying to add the, fetal alcohol syndrome to OHI. What's the thought behind that?
The legislative intent behind that bill really is to bring more so of an awareness in the spotlight to the fact that many of our students that are identified as having a student with disability are also as a result of fetal alcohol syndrome. So really ensuring that those students are captured in our population and receive the services as appropriate, as I think sometimes the sort of the way that it presents in children could present in a variety of different ways, but making sure that educators have an awareness, our school teams have an awareness of actually the impact of fetal alcohol syndrome for students, and providing those supports as appropriate as well.
No, thank you for explaining that and clarifying it. And I think just along the same lines, because it's a multiple multiple issues, and they could fall anywhere with eligibility wise. But I think we need to do training behind our school staff of different disorders that may be manifested in different ways as well, and how that looks within the other health impaired when it comes to chronic like situations with children and their health.
Absolutely. I think the sort of the disability category of other health impairment, OHI, is oftentimes a very great area for school teams. And so certainly, shedding a spotlight on, I think, the nuance within that category, I think will help teams better navigate and in turn better provide supports for students. So very good point. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? I have a question regarding the diploma pathway work group. Can you give us more information on that? Has that work group started? How is the work group going to be configured?
Sure. That work has not yet started this year. We're certainly waiting for the budget to be finalized. This year, the work will be a competitive process as well. So as you know, that will take some time for CDE to secure a contract through a competitive process as well. Once that work, and that we have a successful bidder, we will be engaging in obviously a scope of work and sort of building off of the report that went to the legislature as well. And so, at this point, obviously, we know that over the next 2 years, we must develop that pathway. So again, that work will focus specifically on coursework. And we'll obviously a variety of educational partners, cross-sector work group across the state will be participating in that as well. In terms of some of the details, in terms of formation and things like that, we're still sort of determining and waiting for sort of finalized budget language. But know that we're happy obviously to provide updates once that's finalized in terms of what's the plan moving forward, and we'll go from there as well.
Thank you, Director Calamise. Are there any public comments at this time?
We have none.
All right, hearing none, we will now move into our scheduled 60-minute lunch break. We are going to break now at 12 o'clock and return here back at 1 o'clock. Okay, see you back here at 1. Thank you. Oh, welcome back, Commissioners, from your lunch. We are now going to move right on into item number 4, Commissioner updates and liaison reports. Commissioners, please join me in welcoming our new State Board of Education liaison, Member Sharon Olkin. Member Olkin, please introduce yourself, share your background and current role in education, and please update us with any activities from the State Board of Education.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. My name is Sharon Olkin. I am a new state board member as of March, and I was very lucky because I got the liaison assignment to be here with you all from now moving forward. I am currently the executive director of Gateway Public Schools in San Francisco, which is, we have 2 schools, Gateway Middle School and Gateway High School. We serve about 1,000 students. I've been there since 2000 as a teacher, as a school leader, as a school founder, and now as executive director. And even going back a little further, I started my teaching career, actually, even as a student teacher. I was in a school within a school that part of its purpose was to demonstrate that all kids can learn at high levels and to have an inclusive setting. And so from my first day in a classroom, I co-taught with a special ed teacher, and learned in those 5 years I was in that school that all students are best served when we have inclusive settings for all students. All teachers do their best work when they're thinking about how all students learn. And that sort of founding set of beliefs has been my guiding North Star as an educator ever since. I mean, I chose to go to Gateway because Gateway was founded by a group of parents. We call them our founding moms, who had kids coming up through the school system, all of whom had some type of diagnosed learning disability. And as they were approaching high school, they just didn't see a school that was a good fit for their kid because they knew their students were really smart, but they also knew that the ways in which they were smart weren't acknowledged and celebrated and encouraged in the schools that were out there for them. And so they tried to create a school that put learning and difference at the center. And so that was how Gateway High School was founded in 1998. And I've been really fortunate to get to try and live that legacy ever since. It's hard work. We're all still just trying to figure out how to do it. But I can tell being in this room with all of you this morning that you're doing that exact same work. And I'm so honored to be with you. I feel like I have a lot to learn from all of you. So I'm thrilled I get to spend a couple days every other month with you. And I've been looking you up on the internet while you're up there, trying to figure out what role you all play in the education ecosystem. And what I can tell is there are teachers and school leaders and parents and advocates and teacher trainers and all sorts of people, all of whom make schools better places for all young people, and particularly those who learn in ways that school doesn't always understand. And so I'm just so honored to be with you today. So thank you. And I'm charged today with telling you a little bit about some of the activity at the May State Board meeting. I'm very new, so you probably know as much as I do. So excuse me if I'm telling you things that are, obvious to you, but bear with me. So I'm going to talk about two different things that we discussed at the state board meeting. The first was related to community schools. So you've already alluded to them here this morning in talking about where the CAST group might go next, and think about where their work might have some real influence. So I know this isn't a new concept to you. But I'm still going to say, for those who may not be familiar, in 2021, California allocated $3 billion to establish new and also expand existing community schools. And as you know, community schools are really a whole child approach to schooling, where families, students, community members are partners in serving students and families' holistic needs, which in many ways sort of is the basis of an IEP team, and if you think about it. And so this allocation was the largest investment in community schools in the nation. The current priorities are to serve LEAs with schools that serve at least 80% unduplicated students. Also, there's a real thought that community schools are a key strategy in pandemic recovery, because the types of needs that students have are not just those in the classroom, right? We're seeing all sorts of needs in schools, and they all impact learning and students' well-being in a really tight fist of challenge right now. And community schools are assets-based, they're justice-driven. They believe that young people are more than just their test scores, and that schools need to care about and provide for more than that. In May, the board approved 192 planning grants to LEAs. Each grant was up to $200,000 and will last for up to 2 years. There was also implementation grants for schools that are already community schools. And so there were 76 districts, county offices, and charter schools covering 458 sites that received implementation grants. Those are from $150,000 to $500,000 per year based on the school size, and they last for 5 years. That's an incredible amount of funding. As somebody who's responsible for our school's budgets, that would provide some incredible supports for young people that current state funding, it's hard to figure out how to make that happen. And then lastly, the board approved the selection of the lead technical assistance center, which would be the Alameda County Office of Education, in partnership with UCLA Center for Community Schooling. The technical assistance center acts as a hub for community schools technical assistance, and Alameda and UCLA will be running the lead technical assistance program in partnerships with Californians for Justice and the National Education Association. And just to summarize, in total, the board approved $649 million in grants in May. And there will be another round of funding coming up in future rounds. So that's the first update. The other one is the other one is related to the alternate LPAC. I see a lot of heads nodding. So the alternate LPAC will be the first California state administered test of English language proficiency for students whose primary language is a language other than English and who have been found eligible for alternative assessments because as a result of their individualized education program team. We approved the threshold scores. So previously LEAs relied on local assessments. Threshold scores are the score ranges that designate when a student who took the initial or summative alternative LPAC has achieved or what level they have achieved. The threshold scores were developed by a panel of practitioners who participated in standard setting workshops. Trying to figure out how much detail to give. In April of 2022, there's an info memo that provides a lot more information on the LPAC alternative assessments. So if that's something you're really interested in, you can learn more there. And then following the board's action, student score reports on the alternative LPAC will be released this summer. And will state what level a student achieved on the alternative LPAC. There were lots of other items that we talked about in May. I'm going to review all of my notes before July, but those were the two that had the most direct bearing on students in special education. Any questions for me? I'm smiling under here, by the way.
Commissioners, I open the floor for any questions you may have for Member Olkin. Well, congratulate her for welcoming her. Open the floor.
Thank you.
Welcome and thank you for your share. And it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for that presentation. My question is, you mentioned there's another round of funding. When will that be, and where can one learn more about the opportunities for grants?
So my understanding is that there was going to be a budget update this morning, and it got postponed for a variety of reasons. I believe when we get that budget update and when the budget's been finalized, we'll have a better answer to the question of when there'll be the next round and when the requests will come out. So we'll all stay tuned for that.
Commissioners, any other comments? All right. Michelle, are there any public commenters at this time?
We have none.
Thank you. Hearing none, we will move right into item number 5, Operations and Planning Committee Report. Today in O&P, the committee discussed 2 items. Item number 1, the annual report, and item number 2, the student commissioner update. So I'm going to start with item number 1. ACSE leadership has planned an interactive group activity for commissioners to collaborate together in contribution for our annual report. So we have our editor of our annual report, Mary Grady, who is here. Mary, please wave your hand. She is going to be working with us, as she always does. Tomorrow, we will have a more hands-on approach to working with our annual report. We have a dedicated time for commissioners to work together, so I look forward to working with everyone tomorrow. And also, we are going to take a group photo. Last year, we had, well, the past 2 years, we had COVID, so we weren't able to take our group photo. So this year, we will have an opportunity to actually have our group photo inserted into the annual report. Detailed guidance and forms will also be provided tomorrow, so please reserve your questions for how we're going to do the annual report for tomorrow's work group. Any questions on that item? All right, the next item. Yes, I would in a second. All right, item 2, student commissioner update. I would like to ask Director Calamise to help us with this item. I know we talked about student commissioner progress during our April meeting. Director Calamise, can you help us with a little update on that?
Sure. So we currently are, really working towards a process that we will have a student commissioner or commissioners seated by the August 2022 meeting, and that is our goal. I think there are, wanted to also surface, there is a sort of proposed piece of legislation on the table as well. That also centers student commissioners on ACSE as well. So we are obviously closely tracking that one as well. That is SB 291. And so that is also making its way as well. So, irregardless of sort of the process, we will have a student commissioner in August. Say, for instance, the piece of legislation for some reason does not make it through, we do have a mechanism in our bylaws, in the ACSE bylaws, to secure a student commissioner. And if that's the case, would work with according to the bylaws, to have potential commissioners apply from across the state, a vetting process, and then would seat them as well. So a couple of pathways forward, but certainly a priority for us, as we have not had the student commissioner in quite some time, and would obviously welcome the student voice to the table as well.
That is amazing news. Thank you so much, Director Calamise, for that update. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Director Calamise on the student commissioner update? All right. Hearing no further, oh, wait a minute. Yes?
Okay, I'll ask. So, okay, I'll ask. So I know that there's a process in there, and I know we spoke about last time as well that we have to pick out of the special pool. What is the process? I don't remember right now, but is there like a rubric or some committee that needs to be formed at that point that we need to figure out how to move forward so we could be prepared?
Yes, So in terms of, in anticipation, the committee the sort of pool that you speak of is the Youth Leadership Forum that is specifically named in the bylaws in terms of priority. Preference would be given to alumni from that forum. So YLF, yeah. So there is language in terms of just a priority would be given. But to answer your question, yes, there will and should be sort of a selection committee as well.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further comments? Michelle, are there any public commenters at this time?
We have none.
We are just moving right on forward, aren't we? All right. Moving into item number 6, the annual election of officers. The election committee chair, Commissioner Topalian, will facilitate the annual election of officers for 2022-2023. Commissioner Topalian, I now turn over the mic to you.
Thank you. As Michelle sent us an email indicating who the nominees are for chair of the advisory commission, we have Dr. Havania White, right? And we have Dr. Adler as the vice chair. So now Michelle will go around, roll call, so it's a public vote. So she calls your name, say yes or no to first Havania being the chair of the ACSE.
Thank you, Commissioner Topalian. I'll go down the list, and as I call your name, if you would please state the name of your vote for chair, or if you have no vote, abstain. Vice Chair Adler.
Dr. Havania Hayes White.
Commissioner Gill.
Dr. Havania Hayes White.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Dr. Havania Hayes White.
Chair Hayes White. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Lopez.
Dr. Havania Hayes White.
Commissioner Ruiz.
Dr. Havania Hayes White.
Commissioner Snipes.
Dr. Havania Hayes White.
Commissioner Sorter.
Dr. Havania Hayes White.
And Commissioner Topalian.
Dr. Havania Hayes White.
And that is the roll call. I'll pass it back to you, Commissioner Topalian, for the vice chair.
Congratulations, Commissioner Dr. Havania Hayes White. We look forward. Yes, of course.
All right, now I will go down the list for vice chair. As I call your name, if you would please state your name and your vote, or if you have no vote, abstain. Commissioner Gill.
Commissioner Stacey Adler.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Commissioner Stacey Adler.
Chair Hayes White.
Dr. Stacey Adler.
Commissioner Lopez.
Dr. Stacey Adler.
Commissioner Ruiz.
Dr. Stacey Adler.
Commissioner Snipes.
Dr. Stacey Adler.
Commissioner Sorter.
Dr. Stacey Adler.
And Commissioner Topalian.
Dr. Stacey Adler.
And that is the roll call. I'll pass it back to you, Commissioner Topalian.
Congratulations. You should be nervous. Commissioner Adler as the vice chair for the ACSE. And I just want to say a couple of words that, you guys have done a wonderful job, pivoting and transitioning to in person as well. And just some of the different, projects and the different things that you guys are thinking about, thinking out of the box. So at least I appreciate that. So thank you. It's all you right now, Havania.
I would like to say a few words, if I may. I would like to thank the Speaker of Assembly for allowing me the opportunity to do what I love, and that is serve students and families of California. And I would also like to thank my colleagues for your vote of confidence. I am humbled and honored to have the privilege to collaborate and fellowship with esteemed professionals such as yourselves. And I look forward to a year of active collaboration, shared partnerships, and advocacy through the lens of equity for all students. And I would also like to thank my husband, our 2 kids, the Hayes family, and the White family. I could not do the work that I love without the love and support from my village. Thank you. Stacey Adler, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you all for your vote of confidence in me and Havania. It's a joy to work with you, and a pleasure to be a part of the team and to serve the students of California. And thanks to the state board for entrusting this role in me. So thank you all. Thanks very much.
Commissioners, are there any questions or comments at this time?
Thank you both for serving and for leading this commission into our next year.
I'd like to second that. It's wonderful working under your leadership. Make it a lot easier for people like me, and I'm just thank you for that.
I'm not short on words, but I just want to say thank you for giving us a voice and allowing us to speak, freely and helping us and supporting us, guiding us through it.
And I'll just say thank you. I've had the opportunity to speak with you both, even off the record, and Dr. Habani. I've talked to you over the phone a few times, and you both are very approachable. So that makes a huge difference when we have a voice out here to feel comfortable to expressing that. So thank you. We're lucky to have you again.
All right. Michelle, are there any public commenters at this time?
We have none.
All right. Hearing no further comments, we will now move into item number 7, general public comment. At this time, the public is invited to make comments on any matter, including items not on the agenda. Commissioners are precluded from discussing matters not on the agenda. However, questions may be asked by commissioners for clarification purposes. The commission would like to acknowledge receipt of all public comments submitted via email. Issues raised by the public may be referred to future agenda items. Public comments are limited to 2 minutes. I'll extend it to 2 minutes. Public commenters, please dial in at this time. Any commenters at this time?
We have none.
All right. Wow. Sure.
Clarifying question. Does the public, can the public submit a comment after the meeting? And is there a way of doing that? I'm wondering, because if people are on vacation now and they watch it later.
I think that they can submit public comment for what's on the upcoming agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, seeing no further business, everyone, I now adjourn our day 1, June 22nd, 2022 meeting at 1:29 p.m. We will continue our day 2 meeting tomorrow, June 23rd, 2022, here at 10 o'clock a.m. Thank you. See you tomorrow.